Hey, Shiva, good morning or afternoon.
Good morning, Andrew.
How are things?
Good, good.
Good. All right. Welcome, everybody. We'll give it a few minutes. Hey, Sean. Good morning, James. Good morning, everybody. We typically give it a few extra minutes here, about three or so after. Wait till we get some more of a packed house, so to speak. But I hope everybody is doing really well. Louis, welcome. Good to see you. I was just on the West Coast, Louis.
And what were you doing out here?
Visiting a relative that was kind of not feeling so hot, and we were in the lovely Palm Desert,
Yes.
which is only about 117, 120 right now. And
Yeah. There's a reason I don't go down there in the summer, man.
I had my daughter with me. She's on her college, summer break, and we made it over to Santa Monica, which was incredible.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. It literally, our drive, 2-hour drive, we watched the thermometer go from about 115. When we got there in the early evening, it was 68.
Yep. Yeah, I tell you, I love going to Palm Springs in the fall and in the spring, but kind of avoid it the rest of the time. It's just blazingly hot. It's a dry heat. It's heat.
Yeah. Wow. That's special. That is special there. Well, it's good to see you, Louis.
Yeah, nice to be here, guys.
Okay, Shiva, we got 3 past. Kick things off. I think most of you have been with us for calls on the partner call, but again, I'll just quickly repeat my common mantra. I'm Andrew Morgan. I help the CyberCNS team with their go-to-market. This is the partner call. We've been doing it over 2 years now. We actually did it before we actually were even selling a product, and some of the folks on the call here have been with us, like Louis, the whole way. So we really are grateful for your loyalty and tenacity as we went through that process. So I'm going to hand the reins over to Shiva. He'll give a product update. We've got a lot of cool things going on with tagging. I'll keep an eye on chat. I'll take myself off camera. Please feel free to ask questions along the way. Shiva, I'll let you take it over.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. So,
recording in progress.
I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah. So what I thought today is basically, instead of going through the whole updates, because I'll just go through those updates a little later because it's very brief. I just wanted to kind of talk about a couple of things that we've changed around, and basically the features that we're introducing, so that everybody gets a hang of like where we're doing. So as you all know, we basically did the migration, and post that we've now moved into kind of the feature update mode. So one of the things that we constantly saw as requests, which basically came up from a number of people, was essentially the 2 things. One is basically kind of from a UI UX perspective, we are making some massive changes in the UI UX, which will basically be rolled out shortly. But I'll give you a sneak preview of some of the changes that are coming. But if you really look at it, one of the things which was asked for is essentially that we need schedulers. For example, report scheduler should be under reports and not basically be under the other schedulers. And so we basically brought the report schedulers under here. The second feature which was asked for is essentially kind of the ability to filter by tags. And we also basically have provided the ability to filter by OS. So you can essentially add filters by basically saying that I want to have tags, and basically I want to filter whether tag is equal to not equal to, or basically it has contains or does not contain. So we have basically all of these operators available. So I can essentially go in and say tag equals, and then basically these then shows up the list of tags that are available in my environment. And I can essentially say, I say user machine. So let me do the following, right? Like to show you that actually works. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to use a report that's easiest. That is basically an asset report. And I'm going to just download this report without applying any tags, right? So this is an asset report without applying any tags. And when it opens, yep. So when it opens, you can essentially see that this is the report. And here you can essentially see that we have 12 assets, and the number of vulnerable assets is 5. So all of these codes and all of that data is in here. So I just want you folks to basically keep in mind the number 12 and 5 in terms of what we saw over here. Now, what I'm going to quickly do is close this out, and then we'll come back here. And then I'm going to basically apply a tag. So I'm going to say tags equal to, and I'll say DC. So now what I'll do is that I'll just apply, download the same report. So when I download this report, right, you essentially can see, I'll just regenerate it once again because I think I opened the wrong one. So I think all of them are tagged with this. So I'll just basically choose different tag. Just give me a second. I'm just going to go in here and say tags equals, and basically I'll say user machine, right? And then I'm going to basically download the report with this. So you can see basically the number of assets basically has reduced to the 5 assets which have the which have that particular tag. And here you're seeing no vulnerable assets because none of these basically have this particular tag. So this essentially gives you kind of a mechanism by which you can go in and basically filter out what assets you want to essentially kind of include in a report or exclude from a report. I can essentially say that OS and OS equal to, it'll give me all the operating systems that are there. So I can essentially say I want everything that is OS 2012 R2 standard. And I can basically download any report corresponding to that. So for example, if I go in here and download, say, a vulnerability report. Let me go to vulnerability reports and go to this asset vulnerability report, which is a PowerPoint. You can see that basically there is only one asset in here because essentially that's the only asset that is part of the report that has basically the vulnerabilities. And this is the score based on that one asset, which basically has this particular tag. So, and it is basically the only asset which basically is of this particular operating system, the Windows 2012 Enterprise. So, and if I basically generated this report without that tag, I'll basically show you without the tag, what would basically the report look like. So that basically is the ability to kind of, you have the ability to filter and generate report based on tags, based on OS. And we can have filters basically based on other criteria too. So that is what basically the entire tax-based system is. So this is basically something that we are basically pushing to everyone. And we hope that this will be useful, because this way you can ignore assets. You can essentially decide what assets you want to generate a report for, or you want to basically create a report for a subset of assets. All of that essentially can be achieved through this particular feature. So the same set of filters will also be available basically in the report builder. And just to make everybody aware that the report builder was also pushed in for V3, and we are essentially enhancing the report builder further to basically make the reports look more nicer. So essentially that will basically follow up a little bit shortly, and the team is working on that. The second piece that I wanted to essentially kind of demonstrate is something that we've been talking about a lot of times in terms of the external scan, right? So we are essentially creating a brand new external scan portal. The external scan portal will allow you to basically create multiple profiles. So we have default profiles, which is called a quick scan, detailed scan, and a deep scan. And I'll kind of walk you through what these different profiles mean. But what it also allows you to do is to essentially create your own set of custom profiles and basically scan based on your requirement over here. So when I say a custom profile, you can essentially choose whether you want to do it based on top ports or custom ports. Now in top ports, you can choose how many ports you want to scan, whether it's got to be 10, 100, 500, 1,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, or all the ports which are in there. So you have the ability to choose what kind of scan you want to run on a particular network. Or you could essentially choose that you want to define your own set of ports, and you can essentially enter a comma-separated list of ports that you want to scan that you believe are the ports that need to be scanned. The reason we are providing this particular ability to choose these ports and do the entire thing is because if you look at the standard scans that happen, there is a standard which is defined, which says that there are 3,600 odd ports. If you scan those 3,600 odd ports, there is 98% chance that you will catch all the ports that are open, right? So, and if you have to do a port scan of every host for all the 65535 ports, it's going to take a very long time, and basically it is intensive in terms of the time it takes. And second is that when you scan so many ports, most of the firewalls, etc., start blocking them. So this allows us to basically give you the flexibility to choose what type of scan you want to run. And based on the agreement with the customer, you can choose to run that particular kind of scan. The second is that you want to essentially choose how you want to run this particular scan. So because we can either run it as a SYN scan. So the SYN scan, basically what it does is it sends a SYN packet to the remote location, waits for an acknowledgement, but does not actually connect. So pretty much firewalls, others, basically they allow this kind of a scan, and they are basically pass it through. Whereas if you look at a connect scan, the connect scan basically post the SYN scan returning an acknowledgement, it will try to make a connection to it. Now, when you try to make a connection to it, two things can happen. One is the firewall can actually block you out at that connection level, in which case we will essentially say that that port is blocked. If it is not, then basically you will actually get a response. So, and then there is an Xmas scan, which is essentially kind of, it uses different target behaviors based on different systems. And then it essentially applies like an algorithm to say, okay, it'll try a SYN scan, then it'll try a connect scan, and then basically see whichever works, it basically kind of gets into it. So it's kind of a blend between the two of them. And then the next thing is that you can choose what kind of detections you want to essentially do on it. This is basically an initial version of what we basically kind of put, because there are a whole bunch of things that we essentially run in the backend, which are non-optional, because those are the thing. These are things that you can essentially kind of choose whether you want to do some of these or you don't want to do some of these. So we're giving these options. So with all of these options, you can essentially create a profile, and then you basically can create your own, save your own profiles. And so when you go back to profiles, you can essentially choose what profile you want to basically create. And then when you basically get into configurations for each of the endpoints, you can choose like what is the kind of profile you want to apply for that particular endpoint, right? So you can essentially say that I want to either I want to do it for a domain name, an IP range, or static IP. And then you can essentially choose a scan profile. So you'll see all the scan profiles. And when this is how you associate a scan profile. And the third thing is you can associate a tag with this entire thing so that you essentially get an end-to-end, those tags will be added to those, the scan itself, and will be present in the report that you essentially get. So this essentially is the new interface that we will essentially have. And then of course you have all the jobs, you can see all the job details, and then you can see the results over here in terms of this thing, and then download reports, all of that essentially, which is standard and a part of the entire piece. And then basically there's an overview dashboard, which will show you a summary and overview. So which is basically kind of what we are doing, how many are basically to be done, and what is the summary, all of that data which is there. This is essentially kind of the new user interface that and experience that we're bringing together. The other thing that we essentially have is the ability which we didn't have previously, because I understand from a lot of people that they want the ability to customize how the portal looks, etc. So this is a sneak peek into how we are thinking of the whole problem and how we are slowly going to bring all of the other pieces that we are doing into the same thing. So you'll be able to kind of switch between different kinds of themes, color schemes, etc., which we basically are providing. Right now we have 6 color schemes, and you can essentially choose between these. And then you can essentially have dark themes and light themes. You can choose between them, right? And that will work. Again, we have choices of multiple layouts. So if you want to essentially do the classic, the left-hand side, all the menus, then you can essentially do the classic left-hand side menus. You want to basically choose some of the, so the way it is essentially set up is that you become the master of how you want the user interface to look for your customers and yourself. And then we basically allow you to do so. So again, we are basically providing these options at the level of a partner, and basically not at a level of every single user. Please let us know if this has to be on a per user basis or it has to be at a partner level, and that is sufficient. So these will allow for customizations. And again, simple things like, for example, you want to view this entire screen as a full screen, you can do that and basically toggle between those. So these are things that I think everybody has come to expect over a period of time. So we are just adding in those features so that we become something that you can essentially use and expose to your customers going forward. And then, so we are starting this entire user interface experience with the external scan, and then slowly there are going to be essentially 2 portals. This portal experience will essentially be what we call as the sales front-end portal, where essentially all sales folks can come in, and essentially we are going to introduce only 2 features in here. One is the external scan, and the second is the assessment, so that when any sales folks goes on the field, they can essentially run these 2 scans, quickly get reports, and basically be done with it, and then can basically refer to this at any point of time. We will then port this entire experience into the existing portal for the continuous vulnerability scans once those are done. So these are essentially going to be the 2 places. Everybody who has the current product will also have access to this portal too, and it will basically be governed by the same login. But it will also allow people who basically are not part of the current portal in the continuous vulnerability scanning. And that's a choice that you have in terms of, for example, you may not want somebody to, like say in your sales team, to basically access the continuous vulnerability scanning, which you want to keep for somebody who's basically dedicated to patching those systems and is on the monitoring team. Then you can essentially have separation of privileges between these 2 functions, and have one person access this versus the other person not access this. So this is essentially the kind of experience that we are going to be bringing going forward into the system. And we are going to be migrating even the current user interface into this kind of an experience, which is A, customizable, B, basically is extensible for us. 3 is basically if everybody's portal does not look the same, and you have the ability to make these customizations. So these are basically kind of the big ticket items that we are doing, and this is what we are going to be pushing towards the end of this week and early next week. These will be made live. One of the feedbacks that we've essentially got back from a lot of folks is that we've introduced a lot of features, and in the last 1 month, we've kind of gone through a process of cleaning up all the pending support tickets and closing them out. And basically, even if they are feature requests, we're basically closing them out in terms of giving them giving those features. But what is happening with this process is that some of the things like documentation, etc., are not getting fully up to date. And so what we are basically working on right now is to get the documentation completely up to date. And we will essentially release all the features only when the documentation is up to date. And we've received very candid feedback from people which said that since these systems are being used by people who are taking these features to their customers, it is not fair on our part to essentially kind of introduce features like that. And we completely agree with that. And we have basically put in a process. So we will essentially do scheduled releases. We will basically send notifications that we're making the release. And we will basically have the updated documentation, which is basically released onto the website. Only post that, we will essentially make the release. So we would basically be making these announcements on the Slack channels, as well as essentially on the email distribution list. So, and also basically inside the product too. So there'll be an in-product notification which says that this is the new release that is coming up, and you will essentially get adequate notice so that you will essentially be aware of the new features that are coming. So with that, I think whatever updates we have for this week, I've basically been able to cover.
Sure, it looks great. Chris Sears asks, will the external scans always come from a specific IP or a pool of IPs?
It actually comes from a pool of IPs because we can't scan everybody from a single IP. So we are basically, we have 3 pods of Kubernetes clusters where we basically kind of distribute them across those 3 pods.
Got it. Shiv, I believe it's Luke. I hope I joined late. When is the new interface? You just said it, but if you could reiterate it again, when's the new interface slated for release?
So we will start with the new interface for, as I said, for the sales portal, and basically then we'll backport it to the existing portal. That will be basically during the course of the month of August. Everything will be get backported to this particular user interface. Very
cool. Dennis has a comment. A couple more things. Dennis says it looks great. A couple more things for the roadmap. If you want parity with tools like Nessus and Qualys, the ability to scan even if there's no IMCP response, PN option and Nmap, the ability to adjust. He's just giving suggestions on updating that.
I have an answer to Dennis. Dennis, in fact, we basically do not even say that the ICMP response is something that we have that option to basically check for ICMP responses. We are not doing that because we've seen that primarily most of the people have shut down ICMP pings. So there is no point even trying it in the external scan, which is why we didn't give that option. But all of these scans essentially are port level scans. So basically they are doing SYN scans of the ports that you choose.
Very cool. All right, Shiva, one of the questions is on-prem versus cloud. Any deltas there, on these updates?
No, whatever we basically are giving on the cloud, you will get on-prem. That's basically the parity that we maintain.
Okay. Any news for ConnectWise ticketing? I know we talked about it. Wanted to find out if there's a timeline, looking for more info to automatically put into ticket notes, internal notes, if possibly.
So there are 2 major updates to ConnectWise, which basically are part of this. I don't have the that in QA as yet because they're just finishing it up, but I can basically later post screenshots of it. 2 major updates that are happening with ConnectWise. One is essentially the ability to create configurations, which I talked about last week. But the second is also in terms of ticketing, the ability to basically define whether you want something in a description or internal notes. And the third is basically for all the PSAs, we basically are adding the ability for each alert to essentially create your own template, which is like we come up with a default template of what information we put into the ticket, but you will be able to customize it and add any fields you want from the asset or the alert into that particular notification. And that is what basically will be used and basically sent over to ConnectWise. These are the 3 enhancements that we're doing, and we expect to complete that. We have already completed most of it. We will be completing all of this and deploying it basically early next week. And we'll be updating the documentation with these details too.
Very cool. Chris was asking about external scans, a follow-up, if we're going to have documented IP ranges so he can flag those in his SIM.
Yes, we already have documented the IP ranges. There are new IP ranges that will come up with this new external scan. So we will document it and basically share it with everyone.
Very good. All right. Are you currently looking at integrations into ServiceNow when it comes to ticketing?
We already worked on ServiceNow. It's basically just that it's basically gone onto the back burner because we've not had a chance to test it. We've tested it from a development perspective, but not from a QA perspective. So we'll have to bring that forward and basically get it done. And as I said, we have a separate team now basically working under Divin for integration. So they are to get started and basically get these integrations kicked forward, because we already have ServiceNow in the list. ServiceNow, then we have Ovic, we have Domot's integration, and these are the first 3 integrations. And then we are also basically following up with Sentinel-1 integration post that. And then we have all the backup vendors, which is basically scheduled for end of August.
Very cool. Hey, well, good to see you. For ConnectWise or other PSAs, will tickets close out? So two-way ticketing, Shiva, will tickets close automatically when a vulnerability has been remediated and patched?
That's already happening, Andrew, because that's basically exactly what I said last time. We've gone through multiple tickets and people have actually verified that the tickets are actually closing. The only place where it does not automatically close is 2 conditions. One is sometimes people have a board that they've defined. Once it goes into that board, it gets dispatched off to another board, in which case if you don't have access to that board to close the ticket by the ID, then this problem could occur. Or you have chosen a status from the original board, which basically is not available on the final board that the ticket goes to. That's the condition in which basically the ticket does not auto close. Otherwise, all of the tickets basically that if the vulnerability is closed and it is basically, we have created a ticket, we'll automatically close it out.
Cool. Okay. Well, could you submit a ticket into the support queue so we can troubleshoot it with you? Or anyone else, Sean, so we can see. So you already have one in there, Will? Okay. Is Vishali on?
Yes, Andrew, I'm very sure.
Hey, Vishali, can you check, do a search in Freshdesk for Will Heflin and just see?
Okay, for the ticket. Yes, definitely.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll take a look into that. Yeah, sure. All right, halfway through at the bottom of the hour, we're cleared up on tickets. Or I shouldn't say tickets, comments. Phenomenal job, Shiva and team. It looks really, really good. Other questions you guys might have? Do I dare say, Shiva, we'll give everybody half an hour back, or no? Here we go. Okay, no problem. Chris. We've gotten feedback from our team as we've used CyberCNS more that there are some issues with application name matching being a bit too loose, which leads to false positive. 3 specific examples are Microsoft Teams is not the same thing as Teams Room is not the same as Teams. Skype Room deployment kit is not the same as Skype Desktop, Duo, etc. Is there awareness of this, Shiva?
Is it basically, is the looseness more around the vulnerabilities that are getting shown against this, Chris, because if that is the case, then it primarily is because of what. So if you really look at it, how we match these systems is basically based on something which is called a CPE. So sometimes what happens is that when we don't get an exact match, we try to essentially match based on the subset of the data, and I think that's where you're essentially getting this subset. So we will do basically a scrub of all the products once and essentially see why this is happening. But I was not aware that basically the teams, rooms and teams were basically coming up as the same thing. So I will essentially get this checked out and basically respond back to you already.
Okay. Yeah, as Chris Lewis just chimed in, we have Duo for Windows deployed on many endpoints, and yet we got flagged that they were vulnerable for the Duo authentication proxy, but that was not deployed anywhere. So it was just because I'm assuming Duo was in the name, they got flagged. So, and then we saw the same thing with, we have Teams deployed everywhere, obviously, but there was a vulnerability, I think, for Teams rooms that then got flagged on those endpoints, but Teams rooms was not actually installed. So just that we end up chasing our tails a little bit.
Thanks for sharing that, Chris. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Okay, bear with me. Has there been any clarification as to why agents for on-prem installations are still version 2.0.4.6, 4.46? You there, Shiv?
Yeah.
Did you hear me?
Yes, I heard you. So
Okay.
we have all the on-prem agents basically updated to 2.053. So if it is on 2046, the only reason, Ahmed, that could be happening is because if the download to from the central site is basically blocked for some reason, then this could occur. But I will essentially have a look at it and figure out like why your on-prem is basically still at 2046. It's not. It has nothing to do with on-prem or cloud. All the agents are the same, and essentially they download from the same location. So I will have to basically verify as to why this is the case, or unless basically you're using a tool which is basically pulling it off URL. So there is an updated URL. So I'll basically send you the updated URL. If you can pull off that, then you will have updated agents over there.
Very good. Jerry, do you want to come on and just tell about your experience here getting stuck scanned?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's been going on for a while. I think perhaps we have maybe multiple root causes, but we're to the point for some of our clients where we need periodic automated emails coming out of the environment, not just to us, but to our customers in some cases. And what we were finding is once we stood up those email jobs, first of all, the email jobs started failing and the emails weren't going out. But then as we dug into it further, we determined that our data was not getting refreshed each day from the scans. And we seem to have a lot of these scan jobs that just basically get stuck in some sort of an error state during the night. More often than not, if we kill the job and then manually run it during the day, then we'll succeed. But we've been pounding on this for over a week now. I think the suggestion from the help desk that it could be antivirus related might have been a good one, because I think that may have gotten us past some of it. But even for the stuff that we've gotten past, we're still not getting email reports out of the system. And the attempts to send the emails, like we don't see any log entries in our Barracuda system at all showing that there was an attempt to send the emails. So most recently we tried spreading out the jobs, and I need to see how that did. Like we had them all set up so that everybody's scan for all of our clients kicked off at 1 a.m. and we spread that out by a few minutes each starting last night. So I need to see if that helped any. So, but I don't know if it's any kind of a performance thing or what, but it's a pretty big issue for us at this point, because now we've got, for at least a few of our customers, we're trying to give them visibility into some of these reports, and having stale data isn't really helping.
Okay, so Jerry, what I will do is I'll run a report for all the companies across everyone to essentially see whether there are any jobs that are essentially getting stuck. There was one issue that we had last week, which was basically, I think I put it out because we use what is called the kinesis basically as more like a queue, right? So what was happening is that in the queue data, AWS was essentially kind of giving us an offset, which was basically does not existent for the queue. And so the processing was essentially stopped. And then after that, we didn't know what was the correct offset to go to. So then we would have to, we had to basically redo the entire thing. And since the time window was 24 hours, in some cases, we didn't get the refresh data. That was essentially a problem that AWS applied a patch for last week on Friday or Saturday early hours, and then basically that got resolved. So post that, if still you're facing this issue, then basically it has to be something that we are not doing right. So basically I will run this report and get back to you with an answer as to why this is occurring, if it is occurring on your system even now.
Okay. Just so you know, I see that a couple of other people posted comments along these lines. It looked like Craig Kerrigan said that they were having issues with the emailing of the report, and they had to abandon it after 3 to 4 tickets, not resolving it. That's over in the chat. From our standpoint, if it's not resolved pretty soon, we've actually started putting together our own PowerShell stuff, which essentially means, you know, for some of our features, we're just gonna have to quit using your product. We need, this is very core that the scanning work, that we have fresh data in there at least every day, and that the emailing of the reports work. It's pretty critical.
I understand, Jerry. So what we will do is that we will put our effort into seeing why it is failing and get you a root cause analysis within the next 24 to 48 hours. If that will be the latest time by which I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, because our traditionally our use of this product has primarily been for periodic assessments, and now we're getting into using it more for what your actual, I guess your actual fulfillment is, which is to run it for consistent monitoring, and we definitely need to see that work.
Understood. And you're also facing an issue with emails not reaching you, correct?
I don't believe your system attempts to send the emails based on the logs that I've looked at. But yeah, we should be receiving 12 or 13 emails each night at this point, and we're getting 4 that make it through, and the ones that make it through are consistently the same clients that make it through, but the number of successes has shrank over the last 2 weeks.
So Jerry, the answer is that you're getting a few emails, but you're not getting the emails for all the clients, correct?
That's right. The clients that it fails for are typically the same clients each night.
Understood.
Okay, well, thank you.
So Craig, is it the same with you, which is basically like did you have the issue where basically we basically got rejected from the server? You were asking us for what was the exact message, and we were not basically able to get any specific message except for a rejected. Was that the case, Craig?
Sorry.
So in this case, do you also basically receive a subset of emails, but not all the emails? So you have set it up through your own SMTP server, or is it through SCS? Okay, Craig, if you can just shoot me a mail with this data, I can basically make sure that this basically gets resolved. So because if I just know if it is through SCS, because if it's SES, I can look at the SES logs and figure out like why it did not go. But if it is essentially your SMTP, then I can essentially get the exact SMTP error that we are facing. And if it is something that needs to be fixed on your side, I can let you know. If it has to be fixed on our side, I will basically fix it up.
Awesome. Okay, Dennis, question. We are continuing to move away from scans to lightweight agents. When we stopped AD scans, we stopped getting AD data, even when there is a lightweight agent on the DC. Is there something else we need to do to get AD data from lightweight agents on a DC?
No, you shouldn't have to do anything to get AD data from a DC. Dennis, can you again send me a mail saying that what is the exact company for which you're facing this issue? Because we've seen this happen when, because what happens is that the LWA will run under a system account, and when it tries to basically query without authentication, it basically fails. So that could essentially be the problem. Typically, that's the only reason it happens, because you're not running the lightweight agent under the domain administrator account, right? It's running under a system account. So as a system account, you don't have access to the, if you run the PowerShell, you won't get access to it. So that is basically a minor change that needs to occur. So I will actually document that and send it across in case how to make lightweight agent pull data. Else, if you basically give it as part of the, I think we don't have the ability for you to provide a credential in that particular case. I will essentially make sure that we have a mechanism to provide an AD credential, and if that credential is added, then it can essentially pull the data. I can see why that problem is occurring for lightweight agents. I will basically get that fixed up.
All right. So we are caught up again. Yeah, we're caught up, Shiva.
Perfect. I think I have a few action items that I have taken back, which basically with Jerry and others, which basically is valuable to me because I can go out and look at these things and basically get them resolved. I think all of the items that I had taken as action items in the previous weeks, I've got them resolved, especially with Ian and others. I will basically work on these items today and basically get those resolved in the next couple of days.
Awesome. All right. Should we call it, give everybody about 15 minutes back, Shiva?
Absolutely.
All right. All right, everybody. Shiva, any thoughts on next week? Will we be doing
Yes, we'll be doing
call, or probably every other now?
No, we'll be doing a call next week, because now we basically gotten into the development cycle, so we can essentially do the calls next week, and I can give updates on any of the fixes that we have. And I think it's a good forum for also to people tell us the issues that they've been having, like Jerry and others did, so that we can make the tool right, so that they feel that the tool is serving its value. So
sure, very good.
So
all right, everybody, as always, thanks so much for your participation, your input, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here next week. Until then, have a fantastic week, everybody. Take care. Thanks, Shiva.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.